Hello, everybody. My name is Kristen. I'm the Director of Operations here at GMI. I'd like to welcome you to our roundtable on how is AI affecting the job market. We're going to spend a bit of time discussing this. As a reminder, this call will be recorded and made available to our YouTube after the fact. We're joined today by two repeat GMI mentors, Evan and Melissa. I'll have them introduce themselves, share a bit about their career journey. Then we're going to move into some questions that were submitted from our GMI mentees. If throughout the meeting you have any additional questions, please let me know, or please type in your questions and we can address those. Melissa, would you like to start by introducing yourself?
Sure, thank you. Happy Tuesday, everybody. My name is Melissa Perrier. I currently am a senior sales operations manager at Microsoft Advertising. I've actually been in this role about 3 months, but before that, I was leading a team across Europe and the US for trading or advertising operations, we call it. And I've been in the digital advertising industry for over 10 years now. Before that, I worked in college administration, magazine writing, and editing, believe it or not. So I come from a non-traditional background. I don't come from money. I had an interesting journey here, and I've always just really felt value in sharing my knowledge because that really helped me on my path. And so I'm hoping to do that today.
Thank you. Evan?
My name's Evan Hennis. I'm a senior software engineer here at Microsoft in the security group. We're around privacy and user data, making sure everyone's secured. As far as like machine learning stuff, I was a GDE for machine learning for Google. I did that for about 4 years. I didn't agree with what they were doing, so I stepped down a year ago. So I've got that background. I've done a couple courses on machine learning, but I'm by far from a senior machine learning person, but I do utilize it quite a bit. So hopefully that comes in handy.
Great. Thank you both already for sharing a bit about yourselves. The first question that we received was about AI job application screening. So what does this mean for applicants and what can someone do to adapt to this new AI screenings? Melissa, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I actually think I have a lot more to add on the job applications piece when it comes to talking about AI in the industry. As a professional mentor, both through GMI and other avenues, I like to stay up to stuff on currently what's going on, even if I'm not looking for a position at the moment. And so I actually did an experiment myself early last year and used that learnings with my mentees recently, which is what happens if you apply to a bunch of positions with an AI resume versus a resume you've normally written, to see if any would get responses where the other ones wouldn't. So this is my personal experience and experiment. I'm not saying everyone should go out and do this. I did it at a small scale. I don't plan to do it again, at least not right now. But essentially what I've noticed is if you run your resume through an AI, something like LinkedIn, ChatGPT, Copilot, whichever one you're using, it actually scrapes a lot of the numbers off the top, which is something we're used to doing with our resumes over the last few decades, right? Like a hiring manager, which I have been for many years before this role, loves to see some impressive numbers on a resume. But it looks like AI that are combing and receiving applications don't value that as much, or maybe they're just not as complex or understanding of those numbers when they're taking the applications in. And so it seems that they prioritize keywords over anything else. And I did see two responses on AI resumes where I didn't on my personal written quantified resume, let's say, which I thought was really interesting. Again, small scale experiment, but it was just something that I really took away and was like, okay, we are in a changing environment, right? This is like the dawn of internet, but now it's the dawn of AI. It's going to take a decade or so before anything feels normal or makes sense, let's say. It's going to keep changing, but I think that's just really good to be aware of, and maybe it's worth having more than one resume when you're applying, and trying to gauge which one you should use as the environment continues to change.
As for clarification, when you're saying numbers as opposed to keywords, what is it by numbers you mean?
Yeah, so the written resume, for example, that I made myself would call out things like I worked on Coca-Cola for 5 years. and drove operations for, $5 million a month, something like that. And when a hiring manager would read that, they'd be like, oh, this is awesome. Like, some large corporations or enterprise accounts. And so I've seen that as a hiring manager as a fairly regular practice, where you would try to include some lofty numbers to show either that you've had many accounts or the amount of dollars that you've been attached to, especially as you get to more senior levels throughout your career. And so I thought it was really interesting that it would completely scrape all of those out, and instead it would just focus on industry terminology, keywords for the position or the job itself.
Gotcha. Thank you. Evan, what do you think it means for applicants and how they can adapt to new AI screenings?
Yeah,
I think. Oh,
Oh,
sorry. Go ahead. That was for you.
Evan.
I I don't put this so much on AI as much as just screeners. Like whenever in the people I've mentored or talked to, I tell them to, if you actually want the job, you're not just mass applying to everybody. You need to go to the post and literally just rewrite the post into your experience. Because the screeners, which have been around for a while, will say, does he have C sharp? Does he have DevOps? Does he have this? Does a person have this? So I tell them just basically rewrite it because that's what they're going to filter it on. If they're good at doing their jobs, that's how they're filtering it on. So that's what I've always told people. Now, I also tell the people I mentor, I haven't really used my resume in probably like 7 years, just because, you're a developer long enough. It's not, you're not really applying for so much. You're talking to recruiters and they find things for you. So that's what I tell people. I have not used that knowledge for any of the positions I've applied for. So just put a caveat on anything I say on the resume side of stuff.
The next question was, how can someone identify unique skills that AI cannot do? I think one of the overarching concerns in the world these days is AI is going to take jobs or take opportunities away. So how could someone identify a unique skill to themselves that maybe AI could not do? Evan?
Um, for something like this, I kind of look to see what AI is doing now. Now, actually AI doing, not a CEO saying it's doing it, but actually doing it. Um, there's just the creative part of technology it doesn't quite grasp. If you tell it, hey, do X, Y, and Z, it can do X, Y, and Z. But putting things together doesn't always work. It definitely doesn't work with edge cases on certain technology. So if you want to make a website, AI can make a website for you. It's going to be very bad at deploying it, securing it, and doing things like that. So being able to connect the dots and know how things work together is an advantage you're going to have. And that also goes with when you're in the development world, you've probably worked with people that are really good at their job, no matter what you hand them. So you say, hey, go do X, they're good at it, but then you go do Y, they're also good at it. Is it people that can take the information and then kind of tie things together to make the connection, right? Where AI can't really do that because most of the things it's trained on are a singular technology. They're not trained on deploying and securing a website. They're trained on how to deploy a website to Azure or how to secure that. They don't make the connection. Um, as far as longer term, I don't know. I don't know how great AI is at actual development. It's very dry and straightforward. Um, and I delete a lot of code it suggests. I mean, they're good for like the beginning. Hey, write a class for me, right? Well, 15 minutes into your first development class, you can do the same thing. So it's not relying just on the syntax so much as how it should work. And that's kind of an example I use sometimes. If you have a language, something in one language, and you try and convert to another language, if all you're doing is taking this and converting, that's what I consider AI. Where you take an advantage is I'm not just going to change C++ to C sharp. I'm going to know C sharp and then how to make the change. I'm not just going to do the conversion. So it's like it's little stuff like that, if that kind of makes sense, that
Mhm.
AI can't do yet. And I don't know if it's going to make that jump um, anytime soon.
Melissa?
Yeah, plus one to what Evan's saying, especially in the sense of I think we often forget that AI is a tool and we should think of it as such. Like when the dawn of the calculator came out, right? It's a little scarier than that. But I think at the end of the day, and let me use an example. A few months ago, leading the trading operations team, I had direct reports who were writing Python, SQL, etc., to build solutions. And the expectation and the need was for the folks on my team to know how to write Python and SQL. You can't rely on the AI to write it for you without you having that knowledge, right? Because to Evan's point, a lot of times it spits out things that don't 100% work, but it did a bunch of the heavy lifting, right? It might have written the script that they also could have written, but it just did it a little faster. And they need to be able to comb through it and correct it and connect it to whatever else needs to be done. So what that means is that we're having positions and jobs where you are going to need to be more and more AI savvy. That's what it means in the industry. And I think depending on where you are in your career, and I've seen it with a lot of mentees, where if you're coming out of college, for example, relatively recently, a lot of universities still have that mindset of like, don't use it, it's plagiarizing, right? There are some universities that are adapting to that and incorporating in their classes, which is great. But I'm still hearing from some mentees that they're being told like, no, don't use it. And I'm like, well, now you need to break that habit and you need to get on board and you need to learn how to use it for your own benefit because like that's part of the industry now. But remembering it's a tool. It does also mean that there are some jobs that will get faster, which may require less headcount, but I'm sure this is going to be a give and take. New positions will pop up that are around the AI, while some that have been made more efficient may have less of that headcount, right? So it's going to be a give and take.
And so both of you already sort of touched on this, but are there, if you could share more pros and cons to AI that you're seeing in your life or in your job that could maybe help our mentees as well as they're like getting into the job world. Melissa?
Yeah, I mean, where do I start? I think I'm using AI daily right now in my own position, and that's even after changing positions, right? I'm not doing so much of the technical work right now as I've moved into an operations role that affects more of the entire employee base, but I'm still using it to comb resources that would take me time to sit down and read and digest, where I'm just like, oh, I can't read 20 business review documents right this second, but I can ask AI to read them for me and ask it a bunch of questions and ask it to tell me like thematics or things I need to plug into updates. There are a lot of plugins and apps and AI right now that you can utilize to plug into your meetings, to take notes. I've seen mentees already doing that, which is great. It's the sort of thing where you might have missed something when you're taking your own notes. And so finding the ways that feel the most organic for us right now is a great first step in terms of starting to adapt AI. If you haven't maybe taken a certification or a course or you don't feel comfortable with it yet, what's the thing that's like the least bar to entry, right? So taking notes, having it source information for you, asking it to identify trends for you for something, that might even be in your job search, asking it to say, hey, here's my resume. What do I qualify for industry wise, right? So I think right now, conversationally is probably the easiest way in. But there are also apps that help with coding and the like, and there'll be more and more as time goes on.
Evan, what pros or cons have you been seeing in your day to day?
Um, a lot of it is how how it was trained and what it was how good it was, I guess. How do I want to say this? So like I've I love to talk biases and models and stuff, but you can't do it in a big audience. It gets haywire a little bit. But basically, if you have bad data in, you get bad data out. You saw recently with Twitter got super racist. Bad data, right? Um, so the con that I see is how can you trust what you're getting back? With technical stuff, it's pretty black and white. But a guy on my team was asking AI how to do something, and it was using his own document to give him the answer, which was wrong. So he had written a document on, okay, this is what I'm trying, because our AI is trained on our SharePoint site and looks at our stuff. When he asked, how do I do this? He was getting the negative reinforcement that what he was doing was correct. Well, eventually he noticed that the code that was written was literally his code he wrote. So you have the bad information there. Another con I'm seeing, and it's not so much in the .NET world, but it definitely comes up in the Python world or any of the place has a ton of libraries, JavaScript would be a nightmare. It can't understand where a method comes from. So it'll say, I'll ask, how do I do X, Y, and Z? And it'll say, oh, use this method. Well, that method either doesn't exist or it's in a library that's not compatible with what I have. So there's still problems in there where, like, yes, technically, if I wanted to say concatenate a string, I do string.concatenate, but that doesn't exist. So it has trouble with that part. But yeah, I have having good data is really important. And because these models are so massive, it's not all good data. There's a bunch of junk in there, and you kind of have to go through that. And that's my biggest concern. So I'm an adjunct instructor. The biggest thing I tell my students is that you probably don't know enough yet to know what's bad. So yes, leverage this, but you also kind of need to do some of your own and get the baseline. 2-3 years into your career, you'll be flying. But those first 2 years are gonna be really tough because you're gonna be chasing something that you have no idea that it's not even close to being correct, and you're gonna have some false starts in there. So that's one of the definite cons I have is it, it's still a machine after all. So
And along those lines, the next question is, how can someone fully harness AI in various careers? Um, I think sort of both of you implied this. Did you do courses to learn more about AI, or are you sort of learning on the fly? Either of you.
we have some courses internally, just like
Mhm.
we had a learning day yesterday that has some AI stuff. I'm doing a hackathon yesterday and today, which I learned quite a bit of stuff. Um, I don't, I haven't done any like official courses with like the current set of any
Mhm.
of the LLMs. One of the good things you can do is all of the chat or all the AIs are very good at writing lesson plans. I literally wrote one yesterday using Copilot saying, hey, I've got 4 weeks. Give me a lesson plan on how to learn this technology. And you can go through and it'll kind of pencil through all that stuff.
Mhm.
So that's what I've done. Obviously I had some formal education earlier, but the latest crop of stuff's all been just on my own.
Melissa?
Yeah, similar. We have internal lessons, as you mentioned. My learning day is on Thursday, so I haven't had it yet. But we do have some internal learning courses. I've actually learned too. I have friends that work in different parts of the tech industry, some absolutely not related to advertising or education, different things. And some of them have taken external master courses and will just sort of like have dinner and compare notes of like what their classes were, which is really great. So there are resources out there in terms of classes you can take, certifications, things like that. I think, again, one of the things that I just really want to call out is because this is what we call like an industry disruptor, right? Like this is evolving as we speak.
Mhm.
Those classes are going to continue to come out. They're going to continue to change. And it's one of those things that we need to sort of try to stay up to speed with since it directly impacts us in the workforce. And maybe in daily life too, depending. But yeah, no, I think for me, I was part of an acquisition into Microsoft 3 years ago, and I don't think I really used AI at all before, let's say, 2 years ago. So it's been a crash course for me. But in the past 2 years, I feel like I've gone from 0 to like 80 at you know very fast speed and pace. And some of that is taking courses. Some of that is just really hands-on experimentation, right? I think that's
Mhm.
also a huge thing.
Thank you. The next question is more of a hypothetical. Like, what new jobs might emerge as a result of AI? I think that has been an interesting question that students have had. Evan?
I I think most of the jobs going forward are going to be essentially harnessing minions. Like Despicable Me, he has the minions do everything. I think that's kind of what's going to be. I feel like that specific agents going forward is going to be what you'll be in control of. So
Mhm.
you won't necessarily be creating the report. You'll have an agent creating the report for you. You won't necessarily be summarizing documents. The AI will do that. So it's more going to make you're going to accomplish more with less time, but I still think all the jobs are going to be around. Um,
Mhm.
one of the I kind of envision it as a really good senior could potentially two good seniors with AI could probably potentially replace one junior, but you still need the juniors, they still serve the roles. What I am curious about going forward is if we don't have any more juniors because we think AI is going to do everything, and all of our documentation is no longer getting written because we aren't doing anything and the AI can't train, are we essentially going to be capped at, say, 2030 is the last time we create new information? So then we have this giant brain dump of we didn't create any senior developers because we didn't give any junior developers a chance. We're not writing documentation anymore. We're not asking questions on Stack Overflow anymore. We're using AI to train. So essentially, we need AI to learn what it's doing when it doesn't do that. So that's my concern with the jobs going forward is we're going to have a huge gap of just nothingness that we need to work on. Um, so if a job comes out of that, as far as like documentation is more important because we need training, um, that I don't know, but I don't know how much is going to change so much as you're probably not going to just sit and code libraries going forward. Someone else is going to do that,
Mhm.
but you're still going to have that developer, entry level developer that needs to do that because you still need to scale out. Like it's not going to take it away. It's going to make their job easier. Um, but like I said, I don't know. I mean, if I did, I'd be rich if I knew what the next big job boom is. And I think more like on like the sales marketing side, there'll be a lot more. Their proof of concepts going to be a lot quicker. You're going to have
Mhm.
more people. Hey, I'm going to think of this app and then dump it on the IT department to make it. I saw that when I first started out with engineering people. Engineers are very smart. They can create the concept, make the but then the developers have to go finish it. I see a lot more of that where your non-technical people will be able to do the proof of concept and then hand it over to the developers to, hey, actually make this work. Because it's so easy to say, hey, make me a website that has 5 forms, blah, blah, blah. That part will, I think, be moved more to the business side. And it won't be, hey, I'm going to tell a developer what to do and have them do it. You can basically do it yourself. So I think it's more having more technical or ability to master AI on the business side. I think would be a big advantage and something that there's definitely going to be a need for.
Melissa?
Yeah, I think, again, it's $1 million question, $1 billion question maybe. But I think that there's the potential for some roles to sort of lean into each other. And what I mean by that is the idea, and this sort of lends to what you're saying, Evan, the idea that there are some technical aspects that become easier or the bar of entry is easier or lower when an AI agent is able to do it for you with layman's terms, right? Like you can converse with it and ask it to do something highly technical. As it gets more efficient, right, at doing that, where it's going to be correct, then maybe it will go to someone who double checks it. But like a lot of that heavy lift is done, and you have a lot more control over that ask and pushing that. I think that positions may evolve more than new ones pop up. I think the new ones that pop up will continue to be directly around AI as there are new needs around AI and working on that specifically. But beyond that, it's hard to imagine because it's just so fast paced and moving. But
Mhm.
that's sort of where my head goes.
Well, if you know, state my age here a little bit, front page when it first came out, made it really easy for non-technical people to make websites. So you have a bunch of front page websites that were cool, or is it Wix? Any like online drag and drop web developers. I feel like that is going to be more common where I don't need to be a developer to make a website. Now, if it's going to be good, I will need to hire one eventually, but you have a lot more of the startup stuff is available to you. Just don't look at the code underneath. It's really bad.
Exactly.
And then the last question that was submitted was sort of along the same lines of the previous question, but what industries are likely to be the most disrupted by AI? Melissa?
Yeah, I think that question can go in many different directions, right? We know that all the tech industries are going to be disrupted, and they are already disrupted on that front, right? But then there's other industries as well that go beyond tech, right? The art industry is another hot topic, I know. I know there are artists out there using paid versions of AI to help them write novels or, work on their art so that it's not scraped, but there's no guarantee once they release it or someone purchases it that it doesn't still make its way back into the ether. And so I think there's different impacts on different industries, but I think the one that we feel the most in working in Microsoft is the tech one, right? And that's just, it's plugged into our day to day. It again is adding and subtracting from things like resources versus efficiencies versus what is your R&Rs, what are your priorities this year? Like it's all changing. But I think those are the two big ones that come to mind. Also, just because I know people who are writers and painters, so I know it's been impacting their industries as well.
Evan?
Um, I think schooling and education is going to be disrupted quite a bit. And I kind of compare it to when the internet first got big. If you want to go find information, if you're an active learner, you have so many more ways to learn stuff. So if you're the type of person that, goes out to learn, you're going to be further ahead than your peers. Khan Academy said with a TA, with a tutor, you go up like a standard deviation, which I think is almost a whole letter grade. So the T, which I wrote to my hackathon, was a TA. The personalized feel you get with a chat mod, chat group, right? Or chat, whatever they call them. Chatbot. It'll help your education. Now, that's only going to be for the active people that are trying to learn. So I think there's also going to be on the opposite side of that, is there's going to be a bigger divide between the passive learners and the active learners, because we're going to lean into this chatbot's your TA, go ask it questions, where you're going to start to lose some of the feel of teaching, and teaching might get a little more robotic. I said, I think it's going to make scaling bigger in schools. I think we can take more students. I went to the online Georgia Tech Masters where it's all pre-recorded, and the TA that monitors the questions, the question board, was an AI, because it knows that the first 10 questions every single semester are going to be syllabus. It's going to be what are the hours, and all this stuff can be automated. So you remove that from the TA. So I think a lot more stuff's going to be automated. I'm not certain if the human element is then going to be leveraged, or we're going to become lazier doing it. So instead of like, oh yeah, I'll help you, it's go to the chatbot, go to this. And if we keep track of how people are interacting with tech. So I think schools are going to be one of those ways. But I don't know. I mean, kind of like robots came in and did manufacturing, but we still have manufacturing plants that are manned, right? So I think it's gonna be a lot of that, where there'll be one person on a very expensive machine doing whatever job, but there's gonna be that one person, and then, they'll do layoffs to make it match and all that stuff. But I think it's just be more, you're gonna be stronger in what you do, but again, depending on what your leadership is, there might be a lot less of you to do it.
Another one I'd add on there too is I was just thinking about this the other day. I don't work in scientific field at all, but I'm excited to see what AI can accomplish in the scientific fields, because I know a lot of that comes down to lack of resources, lack of manpower to be able to comb through data. And so all of these cures that we've been looking for the longest time, and different things that they're trying to do and say like bio and all those things, like I am very hopeful that AI will have a positive impact on that area. And and am looking forward to see where that goes.
I think it can also increase communication too. You have a researcher in Russia, for example, and a researcher in China can communicate through AI without having a language barrier. You can start sharing information more. So I mean, like it's same with the exact same with the web. It can bring you closer or it can bring you further apart. The people that can bring together and share the ideas and stuff like that, I think will take a big advantage of it. But I said, I don't know that AI is going to be able to create enough new industries to offset the, removal of a lot of more straightforward jobs. Because I think it's going to be hard for people to justify, well, I don't need a copywriter for this. I'll have AI do it and then have a copywriter over all of my stuff. So like that stuff, I don't know what AI is going to create. That's not going to replace, those type of roles.
We just received one question. Do you think in the future there will be issues with patents and copyrights when using AI to create, or do you feel that laws will catch up and provide the protection against this?
So my team is doing that exact thing. So EU AI is the European Union AI rule. So basically we have to track everything we're trained on. So if Bing scrapes a book, we need to know what book that is. So then if that author comes back later and says, hey, I'm copyrighted, you can't use me, we can kind of unwind some of that stuff. With that said, Meta has done a pretty good job of saying that's too hard, I'm not going to do it. And it's been 3 years and they've had no consequences. So will there be laws? Probably. Will they be written by someone that has no idea what they're talking about? Probably. Will they be enforced? Do you have enough money? Probably not. I don't know, but that's more of a pessimistic look on things.
For
Yeah.
clarification, I just have one quick question, Evan. Other people on the call might know this, but I do not. When you say like if Bing is scraping a book, what exactly do you mean?
So Bing brings in a lot of like information scan stuff, and there's also we then use that for training. Like for like I know Microsoft has, but I'm assuming everybody has bought all of the AP images because they use that for training. So we have part of our trainings is going out and getting information, whether scraping websites, scraping pictures, things like that. Early on, Wild West, no one gave a crap and they just took everything and they say, well, whatever, we'll figure it out later. But then people started to be able to recreate their own work and had to answer to that. Like I have a book that I teach in my class is copyrighted, should not have any information whatsoever in any trained models. And I can go to any of the models and say, hey, can you explain sessions and cookies from this book? And the code segments show up. So that kind of tells you how good people were with their copyrights and stuff like that. And there's also the debate, which if you have it in good faith, potentially it's okay, is what's the difference between me reading it and learning it and a machine reading and learning it, right? I mean, that's their argument. Now, coming from the people it's coming from, it's complete BS. They just don't want to pay for it. But it is a thought that, is when does it become stealing and when does it become me reading it? So
yeah,
Sorry,
I would
Melissa, to cut
add,
you off.
no, you're good. I would add one note on top of that too, thinking about like the global nature of all this. And I'm sure, Evan, you're closer to it, but I've seen it just a tiny bit from the advertising side that country by country, the laws are different and the level of enforcement is different. And so I think, current ecosystem, I'm more familiar with, say, like Europe versus North America, and Europe has, in many places and ways, stricter laws around data retainment and tech and things like that, and are more likely to enforce it than, say, the United States is. And so I'm sure there are trends that we'll see as more regulation comes out around AI over the years that will also vary based on region, which gets tricky when you're a company that works across the entire globe. So
So those were the rest of our questions. If anybody else has a question, please feel free to type it in. But before we close, I just wanted to ask both of you if there's any final comments or words of advice you would have in regards to AI in your job search or just using AI that you have seen from your day to day. Melissa?
yeah, I mean, I know I mentioned the resume one earlier. I think that's the biggest takeaway I've had and shared with mentees in terms of specifically on job search, which is if you know that a company is using AI screening for their applications, then maybe have a secondary resume that's more focused on keywords and submit that one. If you know that a company you're applying to is because some companies are shouting it from the rooftops, we're not using AI to look at our resumes, then maybe you go with the one that's more quantified because that might be the one that you want to hit the eyes of the person who's looking at it. So that's one of the things that I thought was interesting that I haven't really seen shared around that I just want folks to hear about.
Evan?
Yeah, so St. Clair Jenkins made a comment in there, and I do want to touch on that.
Oh, sorry.
Part of this with the AI stuff losing jobs, there's a weird situation where, like for instance, if we somehow get self-driving cars, like if Volvo, I think Volvo did stage 3, I think they're the first ahead. I could be wrong. One car company, not Tesla, has an actual stage 3, which I think is stage 3, which means if you get in trouble, it can get you to the side of the road. Tesla's a step behind and says if you get in trouble, screw it, you're dead. But if we get self-driving cars to work, our trucking industry is completely gutted, right? You have all these people that are truckers that no longer have jobs. And if you then change that up and we become electric versus gas, the gas tax pays for our roads. So we have these massive potential for massive alters in our job force that we have no idea what we're going to do. Now, you would hope that this AI takes over and it's magical and people are giving and we have supports and all the other stuff. That's not going to happen. Let's be honest. It's going to be the select few are going to have it and they're going to take everything else. So that's one of those scenarios where I don't have faith that we're going to handle it well, but there are human consequences for this. Same with manufacturing after World War. Once we start automating manufacturing, people with manufacturing degrees don't have jobs anymore. And telling them to learn to code doesn't help, right? Like it doesn't help anything. So I don't know how we're going to safely transition from our current workforce to an AI workforce because you're seeing in tech, Microsoft's have 9,000 people in like a month, where they're definitely not going to hire more people to not do anything, right? So they care more about the bottom line than the human element. And I don't know how, as a society, we correct that because if all of a sudden we don't need manufacturing anymore, do we have a basic income to help those people? Do we say good luck, find something else? Like then you start seeing your unemployment spike and you start seeing all sorts of negative consequences just because we have a new technology that doesn't need as much manpower. And when the bottom line means more than anything, you're gonna, have those consequences. And I don't know the answer to it. I don't know how we're gonna fix it because it's coming, right? Like if I can do the job of 5 engineers, there's 4 people that don't have jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what are they going to do? It's not their fault. So then what industry needs 4 people? Well, everything's getting more automated, so it's not going to be something like that. We don't need a million more carpenters. We're not going to need a million more plumbers, like typical jobs that our manual labor doesn't need that much anymore. So I don't know like how we're going to handle that. And I don't necessarily trust the people in charge to be, is altruistic the right word? They're actually help versus, hey, I'll make 10 more dollars this week and you won't have a job. So I don't know. It stinks, but that's kind of my comment on that. So what's your original question for everyone on my tangent?
Well, it was just, do you have any final like bits of advice or for your job application process using AI or just AI? Any last bits of advice?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I take it as a Bing or Google on steroids. I'm a huge fan of the conversational part of it. I like having context. So if I say, what what's the best part about Disneyland? And they, give me something back. Now explain this and then explain this. I don't need to have a massive query saying in Disneyland, I'm going to this. So like you can kind of build out your conversational stuff. And I think it works better. Like I haven't used a straight search engine in probably 9 months. It's always straight to AI, straight to answer right there. So it's coming. It's not going anywhere. Like, so you kind of try and figure out how it works for you. And again, take advantage of the tools you have. When I started it, I didn't have a knowledge base to learn coding. It was the book or nothing. Where now a person that starts has the entire internet at a type a couple keys and AI will write the thing for them and show them how to do it. So it's just, taking advantage of having that extra information more easily accessible and in context.
We did receive one last question of, do you think that it's worth taking courses to have an expertise in AI? Do either of you have an opinion on, like, do you think that it's worth taking the courses? Melissa?
I would say whether it's a course, whether you're spending the time to sit down and experiment and use an AI that's free or paid for, I would just say that get comfortable with it. If you're not comfortable with AI in your day-to-day now, whatever your day-to-day now is, and potentially in your aspiring, function, if you're going for something that's technical, if you're going for something that's more project management based, and you just need to, see what those skills are and learn how to use it, like that is worth learning right now because that is just going to become more and more and more relevant. And so it'll be slightly easier for you when you do end up in that role, and you are definitely going to be using AI in that role.
Evan?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an advantage. But make sure that you are not reading something from a person doing a PR pitch or trying to sell something. Um, the I'll use Amazon, for example. The CEO of Amazon is going to tell you a very different thing than a developer that is working with the tools Amazon uses. They're going to sell it vastly different. So stay away from that stuff. One thing to be aware. So 2016, I started grad school. Q learning was a big deal. It's basically a way to it's a more memory, you can have more background knowledge of your decision. Then that turned into a neural network, and those two combined. So 2019, 18, in that area, it was deep Q network. So neural networks were all the rage. You probably heard of them. Around 2020, Facebook started using gradient descent random forests, which is basically a bunch of decision trees grouped together and then using a gradient descent back testing method to then pick one. So in the course of 5 years, we went from neural networks to kind of similar to now large language models. Large language models were not that big of a deal in 2016. So just be aware that right now everything's a large language model. I don't know what the next thing's going to be. I don't know if it's all going to be that. It's all going to be chatbots in the future, or if we're going to go back and there's going to be more research opened up about like I'm assuming Amazon and Facebook, all these people selling stuff have a recommendation service. I don't know if they're going to come with something that's going to be the next big thing, and then we'll have to learn that. So just be agile. Like I went to Iowa State, their thing was we teach you how to learn, and it's kind of that same mentality with the AI stuff. Just look around what they're doing, look around where the investment's going, and just be aware of it, whether you take a full-on class, read a blog post or whatever, but you got to be aware of what's going on.
We did get one more comment about using specific prompts in AI to adjust job descriptions to CV, avoid mistakes. Should one not rely totally on AI results when tailoring job descriptions to CV? Before I say that to both of you, I would just like to say you should never only use AI. We did have a situation at one point where a student used AI to essentially create the perfect resume, but that student did not have any of that experience. So it created the perfect resume, but then when it came time for that job interview, that student couldn't back up their resume. So certainly do not rely only on AI. You should always make sure that it is also you that you are promoting. I think AI will help you like advertise yourself maybe in a better way, but I would just like to put in my 2 cents that it has to be still you and make sure that you're not just using AI. But I don't know if either of you have anything else on that.
I mean, there's quite a few examples of AI just making stuff up. So if you say, here's my resume, write a new one, you have to double check to make sure it's legit because you might all of a sudden have a new technology on there that wasn't yours. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my input on just make sure you read it when you're done and it's still legit, still you and not some imaginary you.
Yeah. Yeah, don't rely totally on AI to everyone's point, but also just the idea that AI is going to give you what you quote unquote want, right? It's going to give you what you ask for. That may look like perfection, doesn't mean it is. It's what you've asked for. So it's the perfection you've asked for. It doesn't mean it's useful to you. It doesn't mean it's accurate to you. That's why at the end of the day, you know, to many of the things we've said today, like you need to be the expert and use it as a tool.
And one advantage that, like I said, I really like the context of AI. You can tell it, here's your knowledge base, here's my stats, here's all this stuff, make it. If it doesn't look right, it knows what you're doing. Just keep asking questions. Hey, can you change this to this? Can you put it in this format? Can you add this? Can I move this to the top? You know, you can do the back and forth to get it to what you want to do. And I don't know if AI knows resumes better than anybody else. So it's also just whoever trained that model saying, here's what I think resumes are, or whoever data was trained on it. So take that for what it's worth.
Well, that is all of our questions. So I want to thank Evan, Melissa, for your time. I really appreciate this. If anybody else has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, thank you all for attending, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.